It's 4:33, and I'm Nicole Singer, and I'm the chair currently, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Right. First thing, we have a new person who's our recorder. Hello. Would you, introductions, yeah?
Yes, so I'm Maria Kopicki. So Claire McGinnis and I were tasked with hiring a person to take minutes for us so that we can focus on the job at hand. And we now have Haley Reamer-Peltz, who's going to be taking minutes. And so please welcome her.
Hi, welcome. Haley, if you need us to adjust our name cards.
You guys are great.
Okay, great. Thank you. Approving minutes of the previous meeting. I don't have those printed. I believe they got sent out though. At this point.
There's one correction, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
And I think that was made, right? As I recall.
I think so.
I remember there being.
Sorry, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember there being conversation about it.
Yeah.
I can double check that correction.
Yeah,
is
I
made.
had one correction, and Mr. Morris did incorporate that as far as I know, and so I moved to accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sweet.
Abstention.
Hmm?
Abstention.
Abstention, okay. Thanks. So minutes of previous meeting are approved, thank you. Now we have time for public comment. Okay, great. There are no public comments. Hi, welcome. Great, so there's no public comments. So I know there were a few items that that people emailed to me farther out than when this agenda got sent around, so I apologize if those didn't make it onto the agenda for this meeting in time for the open meeting regulations to get them on there, but I've kept a list of those things, and so I can help put them onto the next meeting's agenda. So we're going to stick with the previous version, which I've passed out to all of you. I think everybody's got a copy, I hope. Oh yeah, there we go, thanks. So we're going to review the email that Maria wrote to MSBA, and we'll give feedback if we need to, and then whenever we're done with that, Maria, you can go ahead and send it to them.
Okay, I'm trying to
Make it happen, yeah.
and get it so that I can read it to you, so
Okay.
apologies.
In a pinch, you might be able to pull it up on this machine, which I think is not worrying about the Wi-Fi. You can log in.
If she emails it to you, then you can just log into Zoom.
I can get the whole thing to wake up.
If somebody is better at this than I am and can pull it up on your computer, because I sent it by email.
You're not on the Wi-Fi? You're having trouble with Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can-
It looks like it's there now, but I just don't have.
Looks like you're on the public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Suggestion while I'm trying to do this.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's something quick that we can go to,
Okay.
because I do need to read this. Actually, one of the things that I was, that if I could bring up is I was thinking about this letter, which is very brief and is basically just a request to have both Wildwood and Fort River evaluated as part of the MSBA's 2016 needs survey. The reason that we weren't evaluated is because there was an active project at that time and you cannot be evaluated. So my question, and maybe we can discuss this while I'm doing this, is to see where it should come from. And in thinking about it, I just wanted to throw out there that it might be more appropriate for it to come from either superintendent or school committee as the bodies with whom the MSBA generally communicates. So I'll keep looking.
Sure. Can you clarify that, so the request would be for them to do an additional site study
Yeah.
because it wasn't done in 2016?
Correct. So it would be the building conditions and general environment, the part of the needs survey that is not typically,
Right.
that would be would have been done in the 2016 needs survey and which was not done. So now that they are going to be working with 6-year-old data compared to other buildings across the state who are working with updated data.
So, two things that I think about. One is, before I'd make that request, this is just me, I'm not speaking for school committee or this body, I'd want to ask the question of MSBA, especially if there's a letter going out anyway, how would you consider, we're not the only town that had failed project that applied, and what is their process? Because, for me, I want to assume that they're not thinking about that when they get a statement of interest and how they approach that. So that's, I guess, the clarifying piece that I feel more comfortable, if it was coming from me, would be, how do you think about this, given that that was skipped over? The second piece, so I think that's as much as was, I would want to say, from the school committee perspective, certainly here.
Well, I was just going to say, and forgive me, I just said a moment ago, I feel like because of snow or agenda postings, I feel like I haven't been here in like a million years. So I'm starting to dive back in, and I apologize for that. But the assumption is the needs survey is done periodically, I'm assuming?
Yes.
It was omitted because we had a statement of accepted statement of interest last time.
Yeah, there was an active project.
Right, that's what I mean. I would say two things. One, it would make sense for the superintendent to make the request that he just said, probably on a phone call. I'm just catching up on where this is and how it'll be treated. I think otherwise, it would make total sense for, depending on how it's appropriate, either the school committee or the superintendent or both, to send some letter off asking it to be included. I think that totally makes sense.
So I found it. Okay. So, dear sir or madam, we are writing to inquire about whether it is possible for schools that were not assessed as part of the 2016 needs survey to be assessed at this point. We are members of the Fort River Elementary School Building Committee, a group that was formed with the goal of conducting preliminary feasibility study work to better understand the site and building conditions of one of our town's elementary schools. At the time that the MSBA was conducting the 2016 needs survey assessments, there was an active MSBA project that involved both the Fort River and Wildwood elementary schools. That project was not successful, but the Amherst School District does have plans to submit statements of interest for both these buildings in 2018. Our concern is that the most recent needs survey data for these two buildings is from the 2010 needs survey. We would like to make sure that the information that comprises the building condition and general environment ratings is as current as possible as the MSBA addresses the upcoming pool of applicants. Can you please advise us as to the steps we would need to take in order to have an updated needs survey assessment performed? Thank you for your assistance in this matter. Signed, the Fort River Elementary School Building Committee. So.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Just one very minor detail is it would be submitted by the town of Amherst, not the Amherst school system or school district. And the school committee has to vote, but it ends up being the select board that votes, and it's because we're not a regional school district, which would be different. It's actually a town application.
But the town, right, because it has to be signed by the chair of the school committee, the superintendent, and the select board. So that
town
project.
manager.
The town manager, sorry. That project was not successful, but the town of Amherst does have plans to submit statements of interest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I know it's a small point, but.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for writing it. Do we?
So
Yeah.
the idea is that you're gonna send these and you're gonna follow up with a phone call, or?
That's what we're gonna decide, I guess.
Yeah.
So unless anybody has comments on the text of the letter, can I see like a show of thumbs up? But I'm in teacher mode, right? Can I see a show of thumbs? How are we feeling about the text of the email? Yeah, okay, great, cool, so we're gonna keep the text. And then, so the question now is whether we send it from us versus,
That was a question I had that I wanted you guys to, obviously, we would have to decide as a committee, are we sending it or is somebody else sending this?
I think we should send it, shouldn't we?
it is our question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just a little lost. The activities that the school committee and the superintendent are taking on behalf of the town sort of to submit statements of interest for both schools don't cover this territory. I'm just a little lost as to What are
No.
we really asking them to do, and is it a duplicate that just makes MSBA think those people in Amherst are a little crazy?
No, so what happens is that the MSBA has a needs survey that it does, but only intermittently. It only does it about every 5 years. So there was one in 2005, there was one in 2010, and then the next one was in 2016. And the idea there is that every school, whether or not they apply for anything, every school in the Commonwealth has their building condition and general environment, which is a number of factors for all of those, evaluated. And so every school in the every building in the Commonwealth is ranked and assessed and given a score of 1 to 4 on both of those. Those ratings play a large role in deciding who do they accept when statements of interest come in from towns. So they're working with 2010 data for us. For anything that we send in this year as a statement of interest, the needs assessment is still the information from 2010, not information from 2016.
For both Fort River and Wildwood?
Correct.
Yeah.
Crocker Farm is up to date because it was not involved.
And to me, this is the reason why the superintendent's comment that an initial, sort of facial impression is he'd want to call the MSBA and say you're probably not the only school district that's ever applied to re-enter the process who fell in between these kind of surveys. And so your question was, and it's not one or the other. It can be both. Like it could be sending the letter to request to be included, but also have that be related to just doing a little more homework on whether there's any other way that they factor in the evaluation. How do they handle an application that comes in otherwise? But I'm saying I think that's important because it sounds very sensible to me that absent engaging with the MSBI on this, it's possible that they could be, it'd be challenging for them to use the same sort of apples to apples way of looking at our district versus other applications.
The contact information that, where I saw this it was on the needs survey page of the MSBA. And it literally, it's if you have questions, you can email us here. And it's not going to people who are deciding anything. This is just an email where, any one of us could have just written in and said, hey, I've got this question. But, it felt more appropriate to do it as a committee if we're going to, rather than an individual one of us.
I'd feel fine about sending it as from us.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Consider it launched. Must.
Yes.
I still think that the district should call them and ask because it has a different pressure maybe instead of just being a committee. If the district has we want to be assessed. I think it's very important if we want to submit a statement of interest. I think we want to be assessed. And be a-
So we could have email from us, phone call from Mike. Yeah, cool.
Happy to.
Good. Thank you.
Just one quick detail. Are names going on this? And if so, what names? Or am I just, it's an email. Is it just the Fort River School Building Committee? And I can sign, and I can put my name, well, actually, we can send it from our
email.
email address, right?
Yeah, and we could even paste our,
Put the link for our page in,
exactly.
Yeah,
so anybody who can go back and look at it,
Yep.
see all our names.
Cool. Thank you.
Do we have to vote or?
Do we?
You'd request unanimous consent.
Say that again?
You could request I'm sorry. You can request. I apologize. There's even a whole camera there. You can request unanimous consent.
I'm requesting unanimous consent. What?
For
how
the
did you
sending of the
respond to
letter
this?
and for superintendent's phone call.
Great, what he said.
Without objection, so ruled.
Sweet, great, thank you. Okay, great. I just need you to ghostwrite everything I need to say. Okay, good, so we've done that. Next item, discuss Jim's framework and options for writing the environmental study for us. And I have this which is the indoor air quality evaluation scope of work.
Correct.
Should I run real quick and make copies of this for everyone? Is that
If you
fine?
like,
Sure. And then we can
just
all
have a
look
quick
at it.
discussion, sure.
Okay, sure. Unless you feel like it's something that we could just talk about without everybody needing it in front of them.
I think everybody would be happier if they saw it.
Great, cool. I'll be back shortly. Do you have explaining that can be done while I'm gone for?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
So, the scope of work that I've got here is very rough. I've used it, I don't know, several dozen times over the years. This particular version is in the $30,000 range, and it tests the basic parameters of the air: humidity, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, mold spores, bacteria, and so forth. Similar to what was done previously at Wildwood. It does not give a specific indication of any particular problem, but it gives a general indication of, yes, you have a ventilation issue or you don't. So that's all that's involved. We typically go with a certified industrial hygienist to run the project. It's fairly simple. It's just moderately expensive in the course of doing such a thing. And then the actual pages are the details, under what standard, to what criteria, and so forth. So I've used it many times. I've had good luck with it.
I have a question. This is just for River. It won't be done simultaneously in other schools.
It can be done anywhere you'd like. This is just a rough framework. Like I said, this is about $30,000 worth of testing, so you can kind of get a scale of what you'd like to do. It can be done simultaneously. They can be done separately. They can be done from separate pots of money, but simultaneously in time. So however we like to do it. It's extremely flexible. It's fairly clean. The certified industrial hygienists all do them. So it's nothing elaborate.
Yeah, just to add to that point, or just to contextualize it, I mean, I think that, this comes back to an earlier conversation about that the environmental piece for Fort River would be done as part of this committee, and that Wildwood had a separate pot of money, funds set up, approved by last year at town meeting to do similar work.
Right.
So I think
And I would anticipate using exactly the same scope. I would just change the name, the room numbers, and the quantity of the testing.
So I'm assuming that these results will be able to answer people's questions about, is the environment gonna impact my allergies? Is this gonna impact my asthma? Those are the kinds of questions that I get from faculty.
You will be able to answer those questions mostly. So, do we have a ventilation problem as evidenced by the level of carbon dioxide in the room? That will be determined. Do we have more mold spores inside than out? That would indicate we have moisture inside the building. Do we have a different species inside than out? That would indicate a different condition. So it will give a generalized picture of the condition and quality of the air at that point in time. Yes.
So, maybe 2 at a
And we can
time.
determine the locations that are tested in the building?
You can.
2.
And also, I included in this asbestos as it was specifically an issue that we wanted to explore.
So it'll test for airborne asbestos.
Only.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Very specifically.
So everyone should take 2 sheets off of this pile. It's a 3-page document.
Probably already says this in here, how many places in the building that would be tested.
So this particular one, again, it's a retread. So I did 34 tests, airborne, for bacteria, spores, identification of the species, and then I did a couple of 34 wipes for bacteria and spores, airborne only for asbestos. I think it was 18, but yes, it's specific. And we can modify the numbers however we like. The room numbers are random at this point.
Mr. Pearson, so
Jim,
this looks, Jim, this looks very much like the other reports that
Yes.
have been done. Do you have all those reports kind of in one solitary, location that we can kind of look through and get history?
We can.
Okay.
Sure.
So here's my question. We've had this data on in previous years, and what I want to know is kind of along Ms. Chamberlain's line is this going to answer to the public satisfaction, the questions that they have. And I think that might be a much different study. It might be more of an epidemiologic study in order to do that, which I think would be a lot bigger. So I just want to make sure, I mean, I think this study needs to be performed. I think it should be performed. But will it answer the questions that all the questions that we need answered?
Okay. So I will say to you that I'm very conservative, so I never say all and I never say never. So it will answer the question fairly definitively as to whether we have good air quality or not, generally speaking. Will it pick up every chemical that's possibly being emitted by every book in the vicinity? No. Will it satisfy the concerns of all those involved on a one-off test? No. But if we test it in the spring, and then the fall, and then the winter, and then maybe again in the spring, and we're seeing the same results, I would think yes. For general air quality. If you are allergic to a particular polymer molecule, no, we'll never find it. So, yes for general air quality, yes for general concerns, no for the very detailed specifics that one of us might run into. Yes.
So, following up on sort of the spirit of the two questions that were previously asked, I assume that you have some sort of scale, or there's some sort of accepted scale by which one takes these levels, analyzes them, and then based on historical evidence, corresponds it to issues. I mean, how far does it go? Does it go as far as to say that places that have lots of problems with asthma typically have levels of this, or does it? Or in other words, how does one translate the findings into a publicly understandable, or even like staff understandable analysis that can make sense of what good means, what bad means, how bad it means, that kind of thing.
Yes. So there are copious details and standards associated with how you test, what you test, but there is also a reporting in that says specifically spores outside are 60,000 particles per cubic meter, inside they're 10,000. Outside there's penicillin related, inside there are not spores for mold. Carbon monoxide is excessively high inside versus outside, typically 1,000 parts per million kind of thing. So yes, there are fairly clear standards. Typically comes out in a table 3 or 4 columns wide, 10 or 15 columns high, and it explains good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. Yes.
I have a general question about the process. So is this like a system that passively takes in air and over time, and then they come and collect the filters, and there's a chain of custody and it gets tested at the lab?
Correct.
So what is the duration for the unit to be sitting in the school?
For the bacteriological and the spore, the biologicals, it's an 8-hour time frame over a 0.45 micron. It's in here. Filter. You take the body of the filter, then you identify the species associated with both the bacteria and the spores. The asbestos is for a lesser time because that's by a different standard, but the same process.
Okay. And so is it recommended that those are taken while the school is occupied, or are they things that need to be while children are not, or staff or faculty are not in the building?
It should be under exactly the conditions that we live in.
Okay, so during the school time?
Yes.
So the unit doesn't need to be attended by someone?
Correct.
While that's happening? All right.
It's the pump is the size of my fist, the filter is the size of a golf ball, and it's typically taped in a corner or in a column or somewhere convenient.
Okay, and then do we generally request that outside contractors are quarter checked before they're entering the building, or
Absolutely.
are they just? Okay, good. I wasn't sure if they were just accompanied or supervised.
That's district practice regardless of
Correct.
this
Good.
person.
And then while these things are being collected, is there also some sampling of relative humidity and temperature so that you can correlate?
Yes. See carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, relative humidity, and temperature.
And so, and we have the option to do those at more than one point during the school year.
Sure. Again, caveat, this is a $30,000 test, just standing alone.
When was it done at Wildwood? Do we have that information?
We do, and I'm thinking 2 years ago, 2015 or 16?
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's about right.
Okay, but I mean, I guess specifically, I mean, during what season?
That information is available, I don't have it on the top of my
I
head.
think it would be interesting to consider exactly when it was done at Wildwood so that
Yes.
we could compare somewhat between these two buildings.
Yes.
And then we might even need more data than what was collected previously at the other location.
Correct.
Um,
Although they are very similar.
So my question is related to, I mean, I really want this to happen. I want to hear the data that comes out of this. If it's $30,000 to do it once, and we
Yeah.
really want 4,
Yeah.
4 times 30 is a
Yes.
substantial portion of our
And that is a correct calculation, yes.
yes.
My point being, there is no economy of scale.
Yeah, okay,
They're
that was
going to
kind of
come
where my
here
question was going.
and take
yeah.
a certain amount of time with very highly qualified,
And they come again, it's another 30K.
Yes, yes. However, there are 34 tests. I think 34 tests are probably too many to be taken here, so we can cut back on that. And it's more or less a linear scale, so if 34 tests are 30,000, then 17 is 15.
If 34 is too many to take here, can we use part of it to take some in Wildwood and then do?
So I suggest that we concentrate this contract on Fort River and separately fund a similar contract at Wildwood. Potentially in the same rooms, under the same conditions, on the same days, so we can get a one-to-one comparison.
Yeah, especially because we're specifically tasked for
Correct.
the Fort River feasibility study.
That's actually, though, I mean, it seems like it would be a useful thing, just because the building designs are identical.
Yeah.
It'd be useful, I mean, to me, I don't know how we square the circle between this committee and whoever's authorizing the Wildwood study, but it would be, I think, really good if we could try to find a way to ensure that we were doing them at the same time, and we were doing them, you know, with the same kind of rooms on the same days, so that we could literally say, you know, I mean, it might tell us nothing, because it might just tell us the buildings are identical, or they're different, but they're different for different reasons. But who knows? Maybe it'd be meaningful.
Is there this kind of thing being done at Wildwood? Like, is there a separate body similar to us that's doing the same thing? Because what I'm concerned about is that, like, you know, we have a budget, but our budget is limited, and the idea of using our budget on another school when we're not.
Oh,
tasked
no,
with
no one's,
doing
I
that.
don't, no one's talking about that.
No, okay, great,
No, it's
cool.
good.
Town meeting approved money to do a similar study at Wildwood, so
Cool.
it would, you know, and I believe it was $25,000. Claire, you can check me out.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess my question is about the number, because it does, these sort of things are going to change dramatically by season. So is 34, like you said, is that overkill?
Yes.
And can we, you know, what is the minimum number that we would need to get a very good idea, to answer the questions that we need answered as
Mhm.
best as we can,
Mhm.
and be able to repeat that at different seasons? It will also help guide getting this under budget for the 25K, because
Well, how many air handlers does the school have, do you know?
it doesn't have air handlers as such,
Mm-hmm.
so that.
So no.
Exactly. Exactly. It has unitary units in each room.
Uh-huh,
Yes, exactly, and all that entails.
yeah.
There are some rooftop units though, but that's for the big spaces, the
Exactly.
cafeterias and the gym, and the
Exactly.
maybe technology room.
Right.
So,
So
Yeah.
the answer is as many as necessary to address the concerns of our constituency. I'm pretty sure the project manager rather is going to make sure that the money stays separate for Wildwood and Fort River. And I'm reasonably sure that the school and district and so forth will fund Wildwood along with the town. So I think we're okay with that part.
Sweet.
As far as answering how many, it's an inexact science. I would say fairly definitively that 34 is too many, 15 is probably too few. We're in the 20-25 range. but $25,000 is one-off. That's not repeated testing that we're going to need.
And who would be, would the subcontractor, the contractor you have for this, be determining the locations, or would that, is
So
that something we decide or they decide?
We would give a generalized indication by room, areas that we think are problematic, areas where we have high levels of complaints, however we like to, and then the certified industrial hygienist under this has or is authorized to suggest, but we control, so we'll choose.
I'm not sure what happens from here.
You would like to authorize me to develop this
Yeah.
further.
Mhm.
Yes.
Sweet. That is right, I would.
That's like a Jedi mind trick.
I love having people play
This
my
is
tricks
the
on me to get
contract
things
you're
done.
looking for, yes. So I will develop it specifically for this school. I will coordinate with the principal to pick
Great.
out some general areas, and the next time we come back, we can evaluate what we want to do.
Lovely. Thank you.
Do we need to vote?
Have we moved to make a motion to move forward?
Do that.
Proceed.
Made,
Yeah.
motion?
Second.
Yeah. Second, great. All in favor?
Um,
Sweet. Thank you. Thanks everybody for backseat driving this train in my.
Could I ask a question
Yes.
before we move on, because it's related to moving on? I unfortunately couldn't coordinate aftercare, and so I have to leave at 5:30, and I don't know if there's anything we need to vote on that if I leave, we lose a quorum. And so,
I leave at 5:30 also.
okay.
Okay. Would that? Would be fine?
They're
I
good.
Okay.
count 8 people
Um,
or 7
With voting
people
rights?
now.
No, who has voting rights?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I do.
would be
Lose
fine?
one.
Okay.
Okay.
I do wonder though, since this one is like truly time sensitive, I'm allowed to reorder things in the agenda, right?
Yeah, it's just good to get assent from the
Like
committee.
requested, essentially.
I'd like to request that we move the committee membership update farther up so that the people who are leaving can be here for that discussion. I don't think it'll take long, but,
If everyone looks either blank or nods their head, you can just
right, and
declare
then I'm just
that
gonna go
they
ahead and do
agree.
that. Cool, great.
But I think, I guess we have the 3 other people from the RFQ. I would like,
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
like Jonathan
Yeah.
to be able to be here for that.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so then, what time is it?
It's 5:05.
It's 5:05, okay. I think we can actually do the committee, or at least part of the committee membership situation quickly. And then we can do RFQ stuff after that, and we'll move other things a little later. Cool, thanks. So the update to committee membership is that I am stepping off of the committee. So we're going to need a new chair, and conveniently, since I'm here in my capacity as a Fort River staff member, we do have another Fort River staff member who's volunteered to step on, and I think he's a great idea. It's Ben Harrington. He's one of our custodians. He has a lot of background in construction and all this kind of thing. He's very passionate about being involved in this, and he's even gone back and watched some of our tapes. So he's like real excited to be on board. And I know that my entrance into this committee was simply by volunteer, I don't know if there's a process for choosing as much as it's like, oh, somebody's volunteered, and then we get to approve that person or something.
Well, just to respect the process, I think it would be fair to all staff members to let staff members know there's an opportunity to step onto the committee.
We did that.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
When did we do
Yeah.
that? Missed that.
Yeah, yeah.
Missed that.
It was in an all-staff.
Nicole, we had it sent out through Debbie, but Nicole
Great.
drafted it and it came from Nicole. And I think,
Great.
sorry.
So to be clear, all staff members from Fort River were contacted and told that we need 2 people. Correct?
Well, they were told that there
Gene.
are vacancies. Well, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So as I remember, it went to all staff
Yeah.
because Maria's absolutely right. It wasn't a replacement for you because we didn't know about your decision then. It was just an interest in joining the committee. So it wasn't just Fort River staff. It went to the 3 elementary school faculties
Okay.
and staffs. Yeah.
Can I ask the awkward follow-up question? Did we get one response?
Ben. That's the one.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, he even expressed interest before we even sent that out. So that's cool. how do we do some kind of a process of, so we've got this one person who would like to come onto the committee. I know we have 2 vacancies. We can certainly do another round of emailing staff again saying, hey, we've got another vacancy, who can come on board. But in the meantime, I'd love to be able to take Ben on board. I don't know what the process is for like
Move to nominate Ben
Harrington.
to be the school staff appointee to the Fall River Feasibility Committee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Sorry.
No, it's great, please.
Apologize.
All in favor?
You should offer opportunity for discussion.
Oh, sure, sorry. Discussion?
So the only discussion I have is that since we were a committee that was formed by the school committee,
Oh. do
we
have the
should
authority?
just, we have a member of the school committee that can help advise us and our superintendent on this.
You guys seem really eager to talk, so go ahead.
So, this came up at a previous meeting. I did check in with the chair of the Amherst School Committee. She felt, I mean, she wasn't speaking for the whole committee, but she felt like the past precedent in the town is that when an elected body creates a committee, after they create it, the committee then self-governs membership. That was
You raised a fascinating thing. I remember the exact same exchange because I was on it. Should we? I feel like we should ask tomorrow night at the
Sure.
Amherst School Committee, whether beyond Phoebe and myself, because I was on that email,
Right.
because everyone else on the committee agreed with that sentiment.
Mhm.
Because it could create ill will. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to create ill will if other members of the school committee are like, I can't believe you didn't even ask us. And, you know, it sounds wrong.
I agree.
Okay. So can we do something to the tune of, we'll ask about that with the school committee, and if they give us the approval, then we can go ahead and bring Ben aboard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would suggest we approve accepting Ben as the appointee contingent upon
Okay, there we
agreement
go.
by the school
Agreed.
committee.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Great, so that's.
So moved.
Great. Do we vote on that again?
Yeah.
All in favor? All opposed? Sweet, thanks everybody. Good. So, those of you going to the school committee meeting, would you be willing to bring that question to them?
Yes.
Great.
Right, Mike?
Yep.
And then just for clarity, we're looking for a new chair, correct?
Yes.
So we'll need to discuss it
Yeah,
at the next
next meeting.
Yeah.
And then we probably should send out another call
Yeah.
to fill in the other seat.
Mhm.
And are we gonna keep, I'm sorry, remind me, Mike, did you say all staff or just Fort River staff?
All
So-
staff.
All staff, so
Okay.
could we do that again?
So I would just, I feel very conscious of being a non-voting member, but I do think we can't wait till next meeting to approve a chair, even if it's a chair in between next meeting and now, given that Nicole's made her statement, and I know some people have things they're itching to go to, but I feel like that's a pretty important decision to have 2 people leave without taking part of that discussion. Even if it's like someone's gonna be chair until the next meeting for a longer discussion, I don't think the group should leave without chairless. so
An
to speak.
interim chair.
Right, absolutely. Whatever the group wants to decide, but it's not a small point, and I don't want to wait till, I don't think it's in everyone's best interest to wait till the next meeting, because
Yeah.
then who's creating the agenda?
Does
That
the
sounds
chair
awesome.
have to be a voting member?
An interim chair.
Does the interim chair have to be a voting member?
So I take that as a comment about myself, as I'm voting, oh, no, I'm sorry,
Hey,
Anthony's
Anthony's
here.
here.
So Anthony, do you want, no,
If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not.
I think
For
the
what
chair
is-
has to be a member.
I was just gonna say.
Okay.
yeah.
For what
Yeah.
it's worth, whoever is facilitating the next meeting, I'm happy to like help build the next agenda because I have record of all of that stuff, and I'm happy to meet with you after this meeting to like give you everything you need to run at least the next meeting. You know, whether it's going to be you going forward forever or not, I will do some hand holding with that person.
Volunteers?
Are we missing anybody besides Heather? Just to double check.
One,
No.
two.
No.
The empty seat in Heather.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would be willing to volunteer as interim with the following caveat, is I cannot stay past 5:30 typically on these what is today? You know, on certain days at least. So to facilitate the next meeting, I would be willing to do it, but I wouldn't want to take on a role that I can't fulfill for the duration of a whole meeting.
Right.
And I think the
And
next meeting
is also on a Monday.
Yeah, it's also on a Monday, and it starts at 4:30 and ends at 6:30. And so I'm probably not a good candidate. But if it's just a matter of facilitating something, I'm sure I can work it into my schedule.
Cool. I don't actually have a thought.
Well,
Does
if
anyone
you were
else
going
wanna
to
volunteer?
if you were going to be the interim, and our first order of business is to nominate a chair,
I would be
an
here for the
elected
first
chair,
half. Yes.
then they could take over.
That's true. I like that thought. That is true.
Great.
Okay.
I assume we're having this conversation about interim because no one wants to be chair. I mean,
And
why
that's
would we
what's
have
right.
an interim if somebody wants to be chair? Does anybody want to be chair?
Thank you.
It's just kind of aching to be asked.
It also is new news, so people might
So
need
people haven't had
prompt-
time to think about
Yeah.
it. I guess that's possible.
Although the silence was deafening a moment ago. So we should probably just move on with the agenda since we know we have limited time.
Okay.
So we nominate,
Jonathan.
nominate Jonathan Savon as interim chair.
Second.
until 5:30 at the next meeting.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
boy.
Thank you. You and I will talk, and I'll make sure
We
you have
will,
all the things.
yes.
Yes. Great. Thank you. And thanks everybody for allowing the tweak in agenda orders of things. So we're going to head to, before you head out briefly, we're going to do working group report, and then we'll get to communications. Thanks everybody for the shuffling of stuff. RFQ working group. Yes, thank you.
So, I'm not sure how much discussion is warranted. It depends, I guess, on how many people have read how much of the RFQ. But
This
a
is
draft,
the document, if anyone.
but a draft was sent out last week. It is very much a draft. There's a number of things in there that we would not want to see continue to final, but we left them there because we want people to think about them and discuss them. I think we would probably agree that where we're most looking for feedback is on evaluation criteria and scope and things that we want to see, and we want to start thinking about what we value and what we value relative to other things in a design. There's a lot of work to be done, but we've got a skeleton out there. So, is anyone else on the task force have anything else to say?
Well, I think it's a good start. The related thing that at some point we should talk about, not to interrupt the thought process on scope and review criteria, is the budget. You know, how much do we want to spend on the designer? That's kind of a separate topic, but while it's in my head, I just want to make sure I get it out there that we need to add that to an agenda at some point if we're going to spend $30,000 one thing and other money's other places. But yes, we would love feedback on those items.
And even further down the line, we'll want to think about who's going to be evaluating these proposals. And
Did we ever get final clarity on the question about the town manager and the selection committee?
so, from my discussions inside town hall, it says this is a town procurement. Technically, the town manager, as chief procurement officer, has final awarding authority and appoints a committee to evaluate it. My understanding, based on how the last study went, is that the town manager basically signed off on the committee's recommendations when he was evaluating and interviewing and awarding. So that is my understanding from internal discussions. I haven't had a discussion with Paul myself. That's my impression.
Do you need to have that conversation? Or, I'm just saying it was a different town manager that authorized the previous process, so I'm just trying to figure out whether that's a key gating item.
It's probably a good idea. It's not going to come into play until we have something to publish, but yeah,
Sure.
we should have it. I'll have that discussion with him.
So I think one of the things that our working group was looking for is feedback now, because this is to keep in line with open meeting law, to have your thoughts in a group that we can discuss publicly, that we can then try to incorporate, so.
Right, and if
Tell
there
us
hasn't
what
been
you
enough
think.
time to digest it, then we want to return to this next meeting.
Right.
I have a couple of questions. So the first question I have is, I've missed a couple of meetings because I have the opposite problem. I can't get here until 5. But last time I was, or the one meeting I was at, we were talking about hiring an owner's project manager, and so when I started to read this, that's what I assumed it was going to be. But I see that we're looking for designers. So was there a decision made not to do that?
So we had discussion with council and we had discussion in the committee. It is not a requirement to have an OPM at the feasibility study stage. The MSBA recommends it and would requires it if you're going through their process.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, and our purview as a committee is only for a feasibility study. So we have more money and more time if we go straight to designer.
Okay.
And if the design carries on, we will have to, or our successor body will have to hire an OPM.
Okay, and so it's determined, because one of the things that I've seen sort of sitting from the outside is just the staffing of the committee. There's a lot of work going on, and so and I was at that first meeting, we talked a lot about how the OPM would handle a lot of that stuff. So are we feeling that there's enough administrative support to support all the work of the committee without hiring an OPM? Is that the feeling of the group?
I would say that, especially weighed against the cost and time advantages.
Okay, all right. I have another question. On the first page in part 1, one of the parts of this, and again, I should probably know this, but it says the development of an educational program is one of the things that the designer will do. What is that? What does that mean?
That's a program for the building.
So building program.
Yeah, how many rooms, how many labs, how many art rooms.
Okay, because an educational program is not clear, that sounds, so I was confused about that. And then the other question I have, and I think I can answer this for myself, but I'm just curious what the thinking is about. Part of the work is for the designer to analyze the open classroom design, and I know that was done as part of the study on Wildwood, and it's the same school. So are we thinking we might get a different result from doing that analysis? Is that why it was called out specifically as something that we want to look into?
We might not, but I think it's worth letting a
Worth-
new designer
yeah,
or a new design
okay.
team look at it.
Look at it and see if they have ideas that the
see
first
if-
design team
exactly.
didn't have.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
It also makes, I think we make specific note of not being, feeling that they have to be hemmed into the current footprint.
Yeah,
So that kind of changes things to look at add down Reno and
Yeah.
not current footprint. So yeah, there would,
just,
there
it
would
just
be more
expands
ideas.
the thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good, all right.
One very small thing on page 2 talks about the square footage. Jim and I were talking about this a little earlier today. So for some reason, somewhere along the line, someone said Wildwood and Fort River both 108,000 square feet, when really it's 82. Is that what I remember?
182 or 82.
82.
82.
Just a correction on that. And then my only other piece was just, and this is now getting into the picky Annie stage, so if you could tell me I'm too much in that way, but the bulleted point list on the top of page 3 that talks about the types of analysis that would happen, I would just perhaps suggest aligning that a little closer to the list on page 9 that talks about the different consultants who would be on the design team. There were some parts of that I had questions about, and there's many people who are working on it, you included, Anthony, who are more skilled at that, but I just want to see a one-to-one correspondence of the outcomes versus the people on the team, and I saw some perhaps, or it wasn't clear to me that those aligned.
We had actually talked about that in our meeting, and we kind of opted to leave as much in that section right now to see if it spurs somebody thinking of something. A final version should definitely do that, though. It should definitely coordinate.
And
correlate
just to be
those
clear,
things.
that we left in a lot of consultants that may or may not be
Right.
relevant, but we didn't want to have too short a list.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
In Heather's absence, she's requested that I introduce the discussion of net zero, which we do need to have, but are there any other green or sustainable or for example, LEAD, are there any other programs that we would be interested in pursuing with relation to the feasibility study? And that's for committee discussion.
Would the Wildwood project have been a lead project as part of the MSBA process?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we'd want, I would suggest that as a kind of another minimum standard that we want the designer to be thinking about.
And so, was there any discussion on the Wildwood project about like collaborative high-performance schools? That's another group.
The CHIPS?
CHIPS.
Yeah, so there was a decision made by that building committee to go with LEAD instead of CHIPS.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was active discussion about this too. You have to pick one if you're gonna get reimbursement by.
I see. Pick one, but not both.
Because you have to get
'Cause you
certified.
won't get
Right, because you're
reimbursed.
getting 100%, and there's different certifying agencies.
Yes.
I understand. We'll need a much better name, sure. Just base lead or lead silver? It was gonna be used, definitely lead silver, and we're aiming for a little higher. But.
So for the RFQ, what sort of language would be appropriate to, I mean, we had some kind of vague language
Yeah.
about,
Sure.
you know, we're interested in green, but
We want experience, we go on their resume, lead silver designs, and
Or
we'd
more.
say that in the scope that we're targeting that standard.
So are we seeking the actual certification or just qualification in accordance with?
Yeah, it would be too early that, you know, getting certified happens much more
Throughout the
down the
whole
line,
construction
right?
process.
But in the final analysis, are we seeking actual certification?
Well, our timeline dies out, as it were, with the
Well, that's
feasibility
true.
study, but
That's
that,
true.
that the notion that the design should be something
In
that
that
would
direction.
be able to be taken forward to that next stage.
Okay, good.
So I think maybe at the committee level, we would need to discuss whether it was LEAD or CHIPS, or we were looking for somebody who has experience with both, so that some later committee could decide which one they wanted to pursue. And then there are others, like the 2030 Building Challenge. I mean, there are so many others that we could consider.
That's a question out of some level of ignorance. So when you're getting LEED certified, when I'm not familiar with CHIPS, if you have a net zero energy building, I'm assuming you're going to meet or exceed certain energy efficiency and sort of cogeneration standards that might exist. Are there other things around like permeable surfaces and catching rainwater and reusing gray
Yes,
water,
yeah.
things like that aren't necessarily germane to net zero, but they are critical towards other environmental sustainability
Mhm. Yes.
practices?
So
Right.
LEAD has, transportation is included as part
Yep.
of the analysis. Watershed, there's many other parts of LEAD or, other programs
Cool.
besides net zero.
So I'd say we definitely want to do both of those things. That's wonderful.
I like the kind of open-ended notion
Mhm.
that, we sort of have a certain benchmark that we'd like someone who's at least done a LEED silver building. But if they bring to the table projects that have gotten other certifications, we'd want to know about that.
so for the RFQ though, we're talking about, we specifically want people with
Net zero.
net zero leads, chip, and
Maybe
anything else.
2030, maybe others that we could discuss in another draft form.
Yeah, we could phrase it in such a way that we want, out of certain standards, we want so many, and we want at least 2 lead and 6 total made up of the other standards. We can get into that specific phrasing when we have an idea. In the absence of other feedback,
Well, I have one, with the additional qualifications. I wonder about the wording. It says the Fort River School Building Committee Feasibility Study Working Group as an ad hoc committee appointed for the purpose. That would be a subgroup of this committee? Okay, and
Yeah.
then if it's a study working group, it doesn't take minutes as we discussed before, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Just as a,
and is that in the language about who does the evaluation?
evaluations of qualifications,
Yeah,
yes.
that should, that should all definitely be taken as placeholder language. It will be up to the committee as a whole to decide who does that. That's mostly in there to remind us that someone needs to do it.
Ah, okay.
You gonna jump in there? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think my advice would be that as you go through the process, that it is a formal subcommittee, it's voted by this committee, and that the meetings are held in public, and notes taken, for a whole host of reasons. I mean, it's not a conversation we need to have now, but just, I think it's a great point that you raised, and I think in terms of transparency of a process of selecting a vendor, I think there's all sorts of reasons to make it really formal.
The subcommittee will probably need to go into executive session at points. Is that a thing? Subcommittee.
But that's even better, because that means there's this formal set of rules that you're following in regard to when you're in public session and when you're not in public session.
Yeah.
And the fact that those rules are really well defined in statute and practice means you're getting, this is the point Superintendent's making, you're getting farther and farther away from any hint of sort of any informality around the practice, which is wise.
Yeah. Actually, I'm sorry, was there another hand up? Or I would recommend, in our previous experience, we didn't go into executive session. When we were discussing it, we didn't do videotaping because we didn't want to disparage, I didn't want to disparage, but we didn't want to speak negatively about any firms who interviewed and have that be visible because I thought that's in no one's best interest. But if someone wanted to watch and hear the discussion about which vendor, that I think it enhances the public confidence that it's not, oh, well, actually, because we have people in the committee, I'm just going to be very blunt about it, and perhaps too blunt, we have people on the committee who are involved in architectural world, that there's some, oh, well, they worked with them on that project. If the conversation's in public and anyone can come, I think it promotes a much healthier dialogue and feeling from the public. So that'd be my recommendation.
Thanks. What more do you need from us? And I know that some people are turning into pumpkins.
I think perhaps I think not everyone has had the chance to read it, and those that have, maybe not as thoroughly as they wish. So maybe it makes sense for the task force to take some suggestions here and make improvements, and we'll publish another version and let the committee know. Yep.
Sure.
Can I tell me if this makes any sense to you, and if it doesn't, that's fine. Are there, when having, honestly, I just was skipping this thing, and what I could see in it was sort of a collection of some things that seemed to me to be sort of solicitation boilerplate, in which I'm not personally going to waste my time quibbling over whether 5 or 6 years of experience is the right number. I mean, others may if they can find a good argument for doing so, but I'm saying I'm not going to waste my time thinking about that. And so if there are areas in which the working group can identify things that would really, that you're saying, no, we're not just going to sit and make this decision ourselves, just even highlighting it in like yellow highlighter or something in the draft would be really helpful.
I feel that generally what the group has worked on isn't boilerplate and would be open to comment. Even something like 5 or 6 years of experience. I don't know that any of us feel strongly about it, but if someone did, I wouldn't discourage them from.
I'm not trying to discourage anyone. What I'm saying is that there are elements that you have in there. Well, I was expressing my personal opinion that I'm not going to argue those points. I'm not saying anyone else shouldn't if they want to. What I really meant was there may be other elements that are more exercises in creative writing in which you're sort of demanding creative input from the committee as opposed to sort of what do you think stuff, which is more open to professional experience and judgment. That makes sense. Maybe
I think I understand you now. Yeah. The task force can talk about that.
I mean, I think what the working group is really seeking from the committee today is input such that we can bring to you just about ready to go draft, so that we could get we will need your approval, and we want to get this out there soon. So and we can't take we can't have conversations outside of here. So.
Right.
I think one of the issues to discuss now is the budget, about how much, I think we have to decide how much we offer to pay. I don't know how it works, because we have a certain budget, we just committed 30,000, we're gonna have to commit something to not take care, so I don't know, we're gonna have to decide what's up to the total budget that we are willing to spend on this.
You can either set a not to exceed amount and then negotiate, or you can just set the fee. And you'll have to declare it in advance, but either way, yes. Either way.
I guess most times it's not to exceed X amount of money. Usually it's going to be almost everybody's going to be up to the.
Most towns will just set a fee, yeah, for that reason, because the negotiation just isn't. But we have the option.
And we will be, Sean Mangano has the information about what the various consultants cost last time, so we could compile that and say, look, this is how much of the $250,000 is gonna be taken up by necessary subcontractors. So, I guess we should bring that to you for the next.
Yes, I think we should bring it out also whether it can be that the consultants are external and they cannot be folded into this price. Into the budget, can it be said that the offering goes up to a certain amount, including the consultants, or?
The fee for the designers is fixed, including all their consultants. There's, yeah.
Okay.
But there would be additional consultants we would want to consider hiring directly, which would be like a third-party estimator. So
Okay.
that we would be able to compare the estimates that the design team generates with an independent estimate. Yeah, so it definitely wouldn't be just whatever, this wouldn't be the only consultant we would be hiring.
So it sounds like for next meeting, I'm just thinking of like what to put on the next agenda. For next meeting, we need a more thorough look at the draft of the RFQ, or most recent draft, and that the RFQ working group would bring back sort of the list of costs, fees, potential like cost of consultants from Sean Mangano and wherever else, so that we can also talk about that alongside the draft of the RFQ. Am I hearing that right?
And we should be able to get that out to the committee before
Yeah.
the meeting, so that you will have that information now.
Cool.
I have another comment about the proposal. I'm trying to find it. Regarding the cost of the whole project, it says fiscally responsible, but I don't know if it should be given an estimate of the cost or of the whole project when they're designing. Is fiscally responsible for one town might not be fiscally responsible for another town. So when the designer needs to know more or less a budget what they're working on the design. I don't know if that goes into the RFQ or not.
You mean
I'm
the
not sure.
scale of the
Yeah.
cost of the proposed building
Yes.
itself?
Yes.
I think it
That's
would-
something they'll be guiding us towards as part of the feasibility study, from understanding your question.
Right. I think it would exist on a spectrum that would be worked out during, the work with the consultant, because we're still not talking about demo in a completely new building. We're still exploring the option of renovation. So there's going to be, I think, more than one option that's proposed at the end, and each would have some kind of bracketed cost range associated with them. They would be, independently verified by separate estimators, and that we could look historically at square foot costs of other recent projects and adjacent towns, so that we have a good understanding of, what labor rates are and can project that way. But I'm not sure that we can,
I think we still need to give a certain bracket range, because when I build in my house, I tell the contractor, this is my budget, or I tell the designer, this is my budget.
Yeah.
You have to design accordingly with certain specifications that have to be met.
Right. I think
within
that's the work
that-
that we need to do with the design team. I don't think we can predetermine it in the feasibility study RFQ.
So they would give us 5 or 6 options: full demolishing of the existing partial Platinum Tower in Ivory and so forth. So we would have a collection of options that we would choose from in the next committee level as going forward to actual design. So we need to see through this feasibility study what exactly it is that we have for options, the approximate cost for each of those options, and then we choose the general direction that we would head in.
Make a recommendation probably to the next committee.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, I think this is the RFQ, this is to hire the designer, and as part of that evaluation process, we're gonna be looking at a number of different designers. If you have a designer that builds nothing but, insanely expensive buildings, and, that's going to probably not be as appealing to us as someone who has experience with a wide variety of projects in terms of cost.
So we're not hiring Frank Gehry.
Is there, I wonder, is there a way to include that kind of language in the RFQ?
That's
Yeah.
actually what I was going to, I mean, that was something I was going to add on. But, because I thought, Christine, you were saying that a moment ago, kind of building off of both of you, what you were saying, that if there are different kinds of project types that could come out of this feasibility, then I'm hoping we could work with a designer that did have a variety of experiences of different building types, that in which they could offer a range, and the range could be within those types. The range could be based upon the level of finishes and the level of, I don't know what it is. I mean, I know they're not putting in marble baths, but I mean, whatever the equivalent for a school is of a marble bathroom,
Right.
that they would be able to identify a range from sort of minimal competency to get this thing done, up to, if you had the money, you'd like to do this.
Oh, mine is on a different topic, I think.
Okay,
Oh, that's
well, I don't know. Maybe I'm insisting too much, but at the same time, in order to not waste the time of the designer going with all the bells and whistles on a project, I think we want to direct them into something that has more chance of being developed if it comes.
So if I can suggest, we're depending on these people being smarter and more experienced than we are, specifically in the construction and evaluation and sizing of these types of buildings. So I think we don't want to hinder them with our necessary budgetary constraints yet. That certainly will be a consideration. But right now, we're at the exploration level. What are we thinking about? What are the possibilities? What kinds of grand schemes can we develop?
So on this topic, I thought there was language in there, and I can't find it right now, about coming up with fiscally conservative models. I mean, you had some language in there that obviously didn't have a price point, but did, I think the lay reader would say, okay, they're concerned about cost, right? I don't think it was subtle that you put in here. So as I read it, I heard that loud and clear.
Oh, you're going on?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I can wait, because if we're
No,
staying here.
I was going to add one final point on that too, is that I'm just echoing old conversations about other projects that were in discussion in the town, and at least for my relevant input into them. And I agree with what Jim just said. I understand giving some level of guidance to the designer, but I wouldn't want to give too much, because what I want to make sure is the information that comes out of this process can satisfy the informational needs of a wide variety of stakeholders, some of whom might be very interested in going with the cheapest building we can get away. I'm not saying you're saying this, but others in town will say this. The cheapest building they can get away with, and there are other people who are going to say, no, actually, if you never ask the question of what a more fully designed and equipped building would look like, I'm not happy with your study because I feel like it was steered one direction or another. So I would rather personally see a couple of different types developed, but all of them with a great deal of integrity. So we genuinely have lower cost or partial demo and reuse options, and we also have things that are conservatively estimated around more robust redevelopments of the site. And I think that gives us more likelihood of building broad public confidence in the outputs of this work.
So just one thing, and it's perhaps related to cost, is just, and I could have missed it again, I was reading this on my phone, I wasn't in Massachusetts the last couple of days, about timeline. So I don't know if that was articulated and I missed it, but I didn't see it in here, and that, my experience is that can have an influence on cost
Absolutely.
when it's open-ended like that. So just, and I'm not saying I know what the right timeline is, a lot of people on the table know better than me on that, but just being more explicit about what the expected timeline is, and not like to the day or the month, but to a range of months seems like a reasonable expectation to have.
Christine Joseph.
I did. I'm gonna try and remember. I think it was a point generally that, this committee will sunset with a recommendation from the feasibility committee to whatever committee comes afterwards, and that I think to address some of Irene's concerns about bracketing cost for whatever is future decided, I think that discussion would happen more in like a schematic design phase when the committee would have to weigh out how long is this building, what's the life cycle of this building? You know, we seem to keep our buildings for about 75 years. So there's a weighing of first costs and life cycle costs that would have to be discussed by another committee in order to determine the appropriate amounts of spending.
It sounds like there's a lot of rich discussion happening here, but I'm also being mindful of time. It's almost 5:45. And I wonder if we can bring this discussion to a stopping point and then take like a 5-minute bathroom break and come back and do the rest of things. It sounds to me like folks on the committee are interested in maybe expanding language about cost and about, you know, those various options within the RFQ draft. And if that's, you know, can we send that to the RFQ working group as a thing to, like, here's a piece of feedback for the next draft, and then we'll read that and discuss it even deeper in the next meeting.
The one thing that Mike brought up is, would people like to weigh in on the timeframe issue, timeline? Because that would help us.
I think that sounds like a great suggestion.
So,
Specifics, I mean, that we could, did you want to talk about now before we go to?
No,
before we
I
go?
have no specifics.
Okay.
so what's the typical timeline for design? I would guess at least 2 to 3 months to.
I think it would be more, and I think it would depend on the full scope of services that we ultimately come down to. You know, as Maria mentioned earlier, we have a full list of consultants on there that at the end of the day we may or may not choose to hire within this design. So I think as we narrow down the scope of the RFQ, it'll become clearer what the anticipated timeline would be. But giving them more time would probably result in a better cost proposal, because then they're not having to dedicate large amounts of their man hours, people hours, to the project and manage other projects that they already are working on.
In the interest of time, for the rest of our meeting, I'd like to suggest that we discuss more about timeline stuff at our next meeting, and maybe then the RFQ working group can also share more info about like what different timelines might look like and why, and then we can have that discussion a little bit more in depth.
Yes.
Can we ask a question? I want to know before next meeting. Can we put a long timeline, but with deliverables? Not that they come out after 6 months or 8 months with, okay, this is it, but can we put like maybe intermediate deliverables along the way?
Milestones.
definitely-
Milestones.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would definitely be the goal.
Thanks.
We need to agree to your break, right?
Yeah.
So is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Seems like you really wanted it.
I
so.
really need the bathroom. I'll see you all in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Sorry.
Yeah, that's my my most formal convening of folks. So welcome back, everybody. The next items on the agenda are communications group documents and discussion of website. How many people from the communications group do we have here right now?
Only me?
Just about. Okay. So here's my question for you.
Yeah.
Would you like us to start with website, since that's your jam,
Okay.
and then we can go through communications group documents. We can also table that if you want more of the communications group here to discuss that.
So I think maybe we can go from the website and the press release, because those were distributed to everybody. Some of these things we already discussed it last time, I believe.
Yep. Hey, Mike, that
Yeah.
pile right there.
Got
Can
this one?
everybody get? Can everybody get a copy of that? I think that is that the press release?
In the spring of 2017, Amherst Town meeting voted. Is that
Yes.
sort of-
Yep.
Thank you.
So the update is we have a website that for now it's hidden, but it's accessible. So I sent the link around. I don't know if anybody had time to look at it. It's bare bones so far. So I was requesting if people want to see information there. So we had several areas. One was a brief description of what is the feasibility study, taken out from the article from town meeting, what was the task, members, that now it needs to be updated. And then we had a section of working documents, another one for reference material, like the original RP from Wildwood, and other documents. And then there is links to the agenda, meeting minutes as long as I have, and the video. So that's what there is right now there. Not everything is complete because I don't have everything, but the idea would be to have one tab to post all the documents that we are looking at in here, so that people that are home and they want to access this, they have the same information as we have, and as documents that we produce would be in a separate tab. For example, the RFQ would be posted in the separate tab. So we have also space, the front page, I think it was to put the press releases, or have information of communication in a separate tab. So have it separated, working documents, documents we produce, the communication, press releases and latest news, and whoever's in the committee. So that's more or less the structure of the website. I don't know if anybody has taken a look at it.
I actually used it yesterday. Well, I was trying to get ready for this meeting, and I was looking for the minutes of previous meetings.
Yeah,
so
but I
could
don't
see
have
what
all of them,
happened.
so I need
Exactly.
then
But I did find some of them, and it was easy to find.
You
so.
could have to click on the videos.
I could have, yeah, if I had time to watch them. But I found the minutes and agenda, the links very, very easy to find and easy to navigate around the website.
Okay.
I would,
So I
I would
think-
agree, Ernest. It had a simplicity to it that I consider to be a compliment.
Okay.
When I'm looking on a website, I don't like having to work too hard to figure out where stuff is,
Mhm.
and I didn't have to.
Yeah.
Okay. So if everybody agrees, I would say we could ask the town to make it live. I would need maybe from you, before you retire as chair, all the agendas, because I don't have all the agendas in
Yeah, I've got all that.
PDF.
Yeah.
And all the documents that you have lying around that everybody has shared with you.
Yeah.
If you could make a director and send it to me so that I can upload everything and I'm not missing things in
Yes,
there.
I'm just gonna make like a gigantic folder of things and
Okay. So then we can ask the town to make it live for everybody to see. There is a link to the email, and I think we had requested Dan also to put something so that people can subscribe to the email, the press releases or emails going out. That one I'm still working on how it works. To send the press releases or whatever information we have out. Yeah, that part we are still working on how it works, because part of the communication was to send email updates after the meetings with a summary of 3 bullet points of the summary of the meeting, to send it out to whoever wanted to receive the information. And that, I think we haven't figured out totally the logistics, but it's on the works. Okay.
Let's go.
So that's the update on the website. The other update is about the press release, and
can I pause you for a quick second?
Yes.
Did we have, so you said that you were wondering, should we ask the town to make it live? Do we need to, is that something we need to vote on?
Or by
consensus.
But-
Consensus?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Great.
I'd
Cool,
say
I'm
go
seeing,
for it.
seeing no objection.
Okay.
Please make that happen, thank you.
Okay. And if you want documents to be uploaded, please send it on links to things, to information that everybody should see. It goes either by email. If it goes by email, I'm gonna try to post it also in the documents there. Okay. The other thing was we wrote a press release that we started to discuss last time to send out. The latest incarnation is the one you have in front of you. And I don't know.
I think I need to read aloud for the
Oh.
folks being at home, right? Isn't that like the thing to do?
You can. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I have to tell Nicole I have to step out early,
Okay.
so I apologize. But thank you very much, Nicole, for. I just want to say that because I won't be there at the
Thanks.
end. Your membership and your chairship, so
Thanks.
you will be missed.
Thank you. And thanks for all of your help and encouragement and support and all that good stuff. All right, I'm going to read this aloud. In the spring of 2017, Amherst Town Meeting voted to move forward with a feasibility study of the Fort River Elementary School. The goals of the study are to evaluate the site and building in order to determine what are the possibilities for improvement. The school administration asked for, and town meeting approved, up to $250,000 to accomplish this task that should include a structural analysis, initial schematic designs, and implementation of a community engagement process. The process is anticipated to take approximately 12 to 18 months. The Fort River School Building Committee is committed to communicating with the public about its progress and getting a great deal of input along the way to inform decisions. Members of the public are welcome to attend meetings which are being held in the Fort River Elementary School Library. Public comment is welcomed at the beginning of the meeting, and the committee can be contacted via email at fortriversbc@amherstma.gov. The public is encouraged to visit the committee's website, www.amherstma.gov/FRSBC, where documents, schedule, agendas, minutes, and other information are available. Additionally, meetings are recorded and will be broadcasted by Amherst Media. If interested in regular email updates, the public can opt into our listserv by signing up on our website. A copy of these email updates and other documents will be kept on the website and in a binder at Jones Library so that anyone can access our documents and notes. Community listening and information sessions will be scheduled at key points of the process.
The only thing Heather is the one that was talking to the people at the library, and I don't know what's the latest regarding all the information. I think we are okay with the email updates on some of the documents.
So up on the first paragraph, end of the first paragraph, you say in the second to last sentence, it ends with in implementation of a community engagement process. The next sentence then says the process is anticipated to take
Okay.
approximately 12 to 18 months. I wonder if there's a term like the total project is anticipated to take 12 to 18
Yeah.
months or something.
Or the
Substitute.
committee's work is anticipated.
Yeah,
Okay.
committee's work is anticipated, something like that.
Or the schematic design. Are we thinking 12 to 18 months for the design process?
For the feasibility work. I could see it taking up to a year or more, for sure.
And considering we are,
I think Eric's edit is just to be clear, but
Correct.
we're not
Say
saying
the
community
beginning.
engagement is
That's
12
That's
to
right, I
18
just
months.
really wanted to
Right.
substitute the
Thank
word
you.
process for
Yeah.
something that was
Yeah.
more explicit.
Yes.
the
So-
committee's work is anticipated.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
I've got just a couple things. Put a comma, ask for comma, and town meeting approved comma, sorry, picky English. Ask for comma, and town meeting approved comma. Where documents, second paragraph, documents, schedules, put an S there, and get rid of the ET on broadcasted, just broadcast. And then a more substantive thing is, I think we need to probably make it clear that when people email the committee, that is a unidirectional thing, and they should not anticipate communications back from the whole group, because that would be
Yeah.
in violation of open meeting law. So I think we might need to say, maybe express it in some way that says, if, to share your thoughts. And the other part of that is the other draft that you had where it said that these emails are going to be posted. When
Yeah.
people send us emails, they're going to be posted. I would disagree with that. I would say that people might not want to have what they say posted to us. It is public record, and they need to understand that it is public record and it can be made public. But
No, okay, so I think what we're talking is that the email updates are posted.
well, it said here. So, this is from the other document, the first document you gave us.
Okay.
It's kind of tying into that, where it says something about when people write to us, that's going to be posted somewhere
no.
public. So
No,
I just want to
we-
be clear that that's not the
No.
case. So.
Again, I don't remember what I wanted to say.
If you have suggestions, okay, yeah,
I don't remember what I wanted to say.
okay.
I
If
don't-
you- If you have suggestions about the wording about the unidirectional,
Oh, that was it. I thought, I think that's a great point, and I wonder if we don't have an automated response that says, thank you for your email, it's been forwarded to the committee. So that way people know that their email was successful, they're not just shouting into the void, and that it went to the entire committee.
okay.
Or, I mean, it could say something like, because it's saying public comment is welcomed, and it could say comments may also be sent via email. But that makes, that's sort of implicit that that's just a comment that.
Right, but it would be good.
And then
for-
it can
yeah.
have that bump.
Yeah, if they can, that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric, you deal with this all the time when people write the entire school committee and, you know, I mean, individuals can,
Right.
are First Amendment rights, you can go ahead and
Well, you
respond,
know,
but
it's
not
kind
as a
of,
group.
yeah, yeah. We don't honestly, I can't think of any time that we honestly declare in advance of someone writing us, by the way, you're not gonna hear back from us. You know, I mean, I know what you're getting at, so you're absolutely right. But I think for us, we tend to be more laissez-faire in the idea that we're just accepting all comments and then we behave legally and appropriately in response. But I think in this case, it's good to write something like that. So I could easily see someone writing in, and they should get a bounce back or be an immediate response, and they should know that this is gonna be forwarded to the committee. I think that's great.
So is there some little thing that can be done, like?
Yeah, we
like-
can set an auto reply on
Great.
the email, the use of the email address, I think. And I guess I'm just trying to play with, should we actually say, you know, the chair makes a determination whether to put your review of your comment on an agenda? I mean, how explicit do we be with the,
No, I think it's just thank you for.
Thank you for your
sharing
input.
your,
the
thoughts with
committee,
us.
you know, the committee may or may not review at our next meeting. I mean, literally, that's kind
Yeah.
of, right? I mean, just because,
Yeah, you can't say we're going to review if, yeah, 'cause
I think forwarded, it has been forwarded to the committee, I think it's enough, and maybe say something that, that will not be
For consideration.
I think that having the response takes care of it. I don't think
Okay.
you have to add anything.
I
It's
think,
just,
I think
thank
it
you.
does too. I think it does too, and also I just wouldn't, it's problematic to get into language that tries to suggest whether or not you're taking, you're
Yeah.
deliberating, or, you know what I mean? It is opening up a can of worms. The bottom line is, if we get an email, I'm sure this is already true, we're all gonna read it, we're all gonna pay attention to it, and if it's significant enough to discuss at a meeting, we'll notify the chair and say, like, you know, so there are ways of taking care of that.
Yeah.
And if somebody really feels that way, they can come to a public comment session and say, I sent you an email and I'm really ticked off that you guys didn't deliberate over it. We're not kidding.
Yeah.
You know, that's open and available to anyone, which is great.
Totally. I have a question, so this press release is for, you know, like the newspapers, right? I wonder if a version of this that is written in even plainer language, I guess, could go to things like the school newsletters for families and stuff, or is that gonna be a separate set of publicity type things that you want to work on? I know this is sort of a step beyond like looking at just a press release itself, but.
I would feel comfortable sending this to the school newsletter. I don't know, to trim it even further, I think it gives the basic information and they can contact and figure out more.
Yeah, I would like to see this exact message repeated in as many places as possible.
Yeah.
I think there's
I don't
something to
want
be
to
said for
start-
consistency.
Yeah, I agree, it has to be for consistency, it's a press release, we send it to all the school, to all the principals, if you can, with Mike. Talking about consistency, I think that brings up, one thing that we didn't have here and something that we discussed about the other day is about spokesperson. I think we should have one person appointed to be spokesperson for the committee. I don't know if it happened to you that I got approached by the reporter last week.
I got this.
Yeah, I think we all
And
did.
I didn't feel comfortable answering because I would be speaking for the committee, and I thought we hadn't discussed this in advance, so I didn't want to discuss in advance, and I thought it wasn't appropriate. I think if we have a spokesperson, then if we get a message like that, okay, we need to talk to this person. This is the.
So the chair would be the spokesperson.
Okay, so then that will be the job of Jonathan for.
Well, that's yours forever.
Okay. So that, shall we move to approve something like that, or do you want further discussion?
I don't know if we need to approve it, but maybe when, in our next meeting, when we discuss the roles of the chair, that is.
Yeah,
Discussed.
I'll make sure that
Okay.
gets onto the next meeting agenda.
Okay.
Discuss roles of chair.
So, are we still talking about the press release too, though?
Yes.
What's the next, I'm sorry, did you want to?
Well, I have a question about logistics. So it says members of the public are welcome to attend, and when I arrived late, and I know you're supposed to be here at the beginning for public comment, but I couldn't get in the building because the building was locked. And so I'm just wondering if there's a disconnect between our location and getting members of the public in, and also between the after-school program and members of the public coming in the building for a public meeting. So it's not really about the press release, and maybe
Right.
that's something for another time, but it just, I don't really understand, the logistics just seem difficult, so.
I think that's something where we could talk to the custodians and ensure that the front door will be open or somehow yeah.
So one of my primary missions is to make sure that door is locked.
Exactly.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, let's just,
Yeah,
we
so
had a whole
there's
conversation
conflict
about
and
this.
Yeah.
openness and, yeah.
Ugh.
So
Okay.
maybe-
Well, what do we do about that?
So
Meet-
somebody's
meeting all
there
the schools.
I mean, when you hit the little silver box, the
Not-
intercom.
But only until about
Right.
4:15.
Yeah, because it goes to the office, and the office is locked after that, and it's the office staff who answer the intercom.
Yeah.
Like I had to go to the after-school door and,
Oh.
and they let me, I talked to one person, she talked to the next, and they let me in, but I understood their reticence to just let me in. Yeah.
Appropriately, I was going to say ironically, but really appropriately. We had like a really long conversation the other day at school committee around school safety, particularly in our elementary schools. And I wouldn't, not that anyone's saying this, but I'm not going to sit here and say anything that goes against the tenor of having the buildings as secure and knowing who's coming in and knowing what they're doing when they're in here and all the rest of that stuff. So my recommendation would be, because you're not actually out of being chair yet, that the chair's got to talk to the superintendent and Diane, principal, about whether this is the optimal location from that perspective of public access. Is there a better location we need to be looking for? And got to figure that out. Because we also can't say we want to be open to the public, then have a building that if you're 10 minutes late, gets locked down and you're
Right.
out of luck.
Okay, so I'm going to add it to my to-do list to ask Mike and Diane about location.
And principally around this issue of public access to our meetings.
And outside the schools, because the facility director is locking everything up immediately.
And that's good.
That guy.
I guess-
Yeah,
Can I ask,
exactly.
I guess in my head I'm
for
thinking
school
like-
committee and regional school committee meetings that are held at the high school, so how does it work there? The doors are locked.
It's interesting actually. There's a side entrance near the library that is principally where people enter in. I think the other, unless there happens to be some kind of a school function by which otherwise the door is unlocked in the front, I think the other door, you know this better than I do, the other doors are all locked.
Everything you see.
Right, and so the point of access is right by where the cafeteria is and where the library is, where we're going to be. That, I hate saying this in a public on camera, I guess theoretically someone could come through that door, slip in unnoticed and go to a different part of the building, which is completely undesirable for them to do so. But at least it distinctly limits their scope of activity. I think one of the things that came up, at least in our Amber School Committee meeting, and maybe this is unfair and unreasonable, was that when we got into elementary school spaces, there was a heightened level of concern. Not that we shouldn't have that concern at the high school, and we do, but that people were really, really intensely aware of wanting to keep places where there's preschools and kindergartens and kids,
Secure.
uber safe.
I didn't mean to imply that I was in favor of just leaving doors unlocked all the time. I guess I'm used to this because being in the art room, I feel like my room is effectively public access all the time. I'm the first room you
Yeah.
come into with the building. But yeah, I'll contact Diane and Mike about a possible new location, whether it be somewhere else where we have better access, or if they have some solution that ensures security as well as access in some way.
When was this press release scheduled to go out, or hoping that it would go out? Because the locations.
Okay, so then I guess we're gonna have, we could,
Don't we always publish the location of the meeting when the agenda goes
Right.
out?
Yep.
yes,
So
so.
you could just strike the latter half of that sentence and say which will be published, regularly.
It's on the
On the
it's listed
website.
on the ARPS and the town website.
Exactly.
That's actually good, because there's always the possibility if there's like a storm,
change.
or I don't know, whatever, a leak in the
Yeah.
roof, to move it
Yeah.
anyway.
Right.
So
So, I mean,
meeting,
in terms of, yeah, so in terms of the location, I mean, I know that a part of it was, the sense of, we wanted to, it's about this building, and so we wanted to keep it here, but these concerns are real. As the facilities director nods his head. So, would the committee have any, is there strong objection to moving it, given those concerns?
So can we have the chair investigate and see what we find?
Okay.
Maybe a library or a different school, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
Town hall.
Sure.
hall.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll contact these folks and I'll pursue that and.
Right. And that it's important that it be, at least reasonably accessible by public transport.
Yeah.
Community center.
Mhm.
Is that possible?
We're in a new building, we'll want a meeting room that you can access
That's
directly from.
Yeah.
So, oh, sorry.
Well, back to the press release, we talked about trying to include the word feasibility somewhere in the committee title.
So it's to move towards with the feasibility study of the elementary school building, it's on the first line.
Right,
But not
but
in the
then in the
title.
beginning of the second paragraph, the Fort River School Building Committee.
But it's
I
not,
mean,
so that's our title, so we cannot put, that's the title of the committee.
For the
So-
school committee gave us.
Yeah.
the town meeting gave us that title.
town
Yeah, the
Yeah.
town meeting gave us that name, so we cannot change it, so that's why it says on the first line, I put it's a feasibility study.
We didn't talk about just starting to use it, the word
No.
in there?
So we said not to use it because
Yes, we did.
Well, we did, but
We
we
did
decided-
talk, we did talk about that.
We did talk about that, but we decided that the town gave us the name without the feasibility, so we cannot change the name of the committee.
Of course, I think the school
I don't
committee.
think the town
I think-
meeting vote did.
I think
Maybe the school committee charge did.
No, the school committee included word feasibility in there.
The school committee committee. Yeah.
I'm positive we included word feasibility because we argued about it.
Do you want to
Am I
check on
wrong?
that?
I guess I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Later, I should
The town meeting vote didn't reference that there had to be a committee to spend the money. The town meeting language just raised and appropriated the money. So it was not,
We can look up the answer to this question. It's also, I love
Would you?
saying things I'm
Okay.
positive about something when I could be wrong. It's always fun.
Could you get back to us on that? Thank you.
Ironically, what I was actually going to say though is that if we can get this thing nailed down, we really should, as soon as the site is live, we really ought to send this thing out as soon as possible. Because I mean, we're getting into March, and to me, sort of a welcome introduction. Please follow us to our meetings. Sort of a press release should go out as soon as those details are figured out. We should actually be releasing this as soon as possible.
Yes.
And it's
Okay.
otherwise good. It's perfectly fine.
It's very
what it
Okay.
says.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Super.
Okay, so can I get the authorization with the caveats of comments that I got today to send it out?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes, seeing no objections, et cetera. Yes, thank you, everybody. I do want to clarify an earlier comment that I made when I was talking about like having an even plainer language version of this. I guess I'm just constantly thinking about the way that, students do eventually hear about this kind of thing. And if I put this in front of one of my elementary schoolers, they're going to be like, what? And so I wonder if there's, I guess, this is something I could do as a teacher where if I'm looking at this, we have a student-run newsletter that students actually write and put together. And I could make a kid-friendly language version of this for them so that they can, hear a little bit about what's going on too. I know that families can read the paper and explain it, but I'm just thinking about,
Or it could actually be an opportunity for someone to write an article. Like, that's what press releases are generally
Yeah, that's
for,
what
you
the-
know?
Yeah,
Anyway,
all right,
yeah. Or for, one of the students to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Do I have permission to talk with a kid about taking this and turning it into a kid-friendly
It's a
article?
press
Yes, we
release,
do.
so once it's out, it's a press
Yeah,
release.
you can
Anybody
Yeah.
can
actually
put
do
the-
that and
Awesome.
rock on.
Okay, good. I will ask my kiddos about that. Thank you. And future meeting planning is our next item. So the next date of the email, next date of the email, no, I'm looking at my email for the next dates. I believe is in later March, somebody who's faster at their calendar.
That's 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today.
Great.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's Monday, March 12th. Same
Yes.
time. Same time,
Yes,
yes.
same location.
Hopefully different location.
Right. Currently listed as same location, but I'll find out more about that and we might shift around. I'm gonna take all this info and create the next meeting agenda. Thank you everyone who sent me things, even though some of them didn't make it into this agenda in time, but I'll make sure that they get on to the next one and talk with Jonathan and make sure that that all happens.
I think
Yes.
given how long it takes for us to light on a meeting date, I think it would be a good idea to get the next
Another
couple
round. Sure.
That's good. Can you ask the representative? I was gonna say the same.
doodle.
The next, do that for the next 3 meetings?
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right, ask Douglas Mullen to
Is
send.
it necessary to do a survey every time? We can't set a
Yeah.
recurring, I'm not a voting member, so I don't want to dictate anything, but we can't set a recurring every 2-week date?
I think part of what's going on is that a lot of people have like opposite problems, right? Where like some people need to leave by 5:30 and some people can't arrive until 5:30. So the idea was that if we set a recurring thing, that there will always be people who can't make that. And so if we have a survey, then we know that, okay, we'll pick this time when we'll get most of these people, and then hopefully the next time, it'll be different people who have to miss out, so that none of us need to step off the committee for schedule reasons, is the idea.
And I have a question. Should we keep 2-week interval or trying to, since we want to send the RFQ and some things ask for, it's putting a lot of pressure on us, maybe an interval of 10 days so that we try to move things, try to send the RFQ faster?
I think it would be harder to get really critical feedback with a time frame of less than 2 weeks. Right, for somebody to read it, digest it, give feedback, incorporate change, and issue a new one. Do you know what?
I think there's an excellent chance that with the feedback that we've gotten so far, that we should be able to, the RFQ working group should be able to get something out to the committee
90%.
where it could probably be voted on in the subsequent meeting.
I think that's true.
So in a month from now, it would be, I mean, just put in for timeline so that we don't
Right.
get into end of March when it goes out. I was saying, can we try to think if we can send it out by mid-March or before? I'm
Yeah. If
open
our next
to-
meeting's not until the 12th, I don't think we could send it out before mid-March. It would have to be approved at the
Okay,
next
but
meeting
then-
for it to go out.
before the end.
So is your last command, we shall vote on the RFQ by 12th? The
No, that's when we're
26th?
gonna. That's when we're gonna see the.
Well,
Revised
we
draft.
could enhance it. I'm not on the committee, so I get to push.
I mean,
Well, how close do you think the 90% draft's going to be, and how likely is we can get Sarah enough to review it for the 12th? I'm not saying we should approve it that day. I actually think the right thing to do is to push like crazy to get it done for the 12th, knowing that it's still not actually going to be done, which would then mean on the 26th you could then actually vote a final draft and release it. Because otherwise, if you shoot for the end of March, then it'll actually be done the end of April.
No,
Because that's just sort of the way life works.
That's what I want to shoot for the 12th of March, but don't have the meeting on the 26th and maybe move the meeting to the 20th. That's what I'm saying.
The reality is, if you have Debbie doodle poll a bunch of dates, she's going to be looking a few days earlier than the 26th,
Okay.
and unfortunately a day or two after the 26th, just to see where we can get quorum.
Okay.
So we're going to have to be a little flexible. But I think the key thing would be she should by all means look
Before.
earlier than that date.
yeah,
That's one.
yeah. So I'll ask her to look for a range of dates between the 12th and the first week of April, and we'll see what we can get out of that.
Before the end of March.
Yeah, March 31st,
Oh,
I'd
I guess,
say,
okay, so it's a March,
which is a Saturday.
between March 12th and...
March exactly the 30th.
Oh,
We can
boy.
narrow it down even. Look, we're
Okay.
making progress.
Cool. So I'm asking her to schedule 3 meetings between the 12th and the 31st?
No.
The next meeting.
No,
The
just,
next
just the
meeting,
next
okay.
meeting would
Meeting
be before the
With
30th.
meetings to occur approximately every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then 2 more after that.
And 2 more after, which will be in April.
And then if you can send her that those that come after to take into account that the town meeting starts.
Okay.
I have a general question. Was our committee given a specific sunset date, like we're only effective for 2 years, or
No.
there's no date?
I think it's just at the completion of the...
Feasibility. Okay.
Right.
And then how soon are you going to school committee and asking them about the question of can we bring Ben on board?
We're
Because
bring this up tomorrow.
Okay, great, thank you.
I mean, if it requires a vote, then it's gonna have to be scheduled for the following meeting. I have a regular report I'm supposed to do,
Okay.
which is helpful when I come to the meetings, because it makes it easier to report. So I'm excited. I can report tomorrow.
Awesome, great, because
I'll bring that
I'm
up.
just wondering this because then I can, if we're given the green light for that, I can include Ben on the doodle poll.
Yes,
And then get him on board.
exactly
to
right.
Expedite that. Cool. Thank you, everyone, and thank you all for your encouragement and support of me in this role. I've learned a lot, and I'm happy to be useful going forward to Jonathan and whoever else might need documents or anything else from me.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for bravely stepping into the breach.
Thank you.
and getting us going.
Thanks. All right,
Do we move to adjourn?
Second.
all in favor? Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
So because every time you put in a Google Drive, everything, all the documents that you
Oh, yeah, it's on my to-do list.
Throw my
Yep.
stuff in tomorrow.
Sure.
Sure.
Yes, I have quite
I have
a
some
massive to-do list, and I will, and you are on it.